the Arch Gaming Network is proud to bring you this board game review. Now here's your host, Sean Smith.
Hello and thank you for stopping by. Today we are taking a look at a game that is coming to Kickstarter soon, and when it does I will leave a link in the description below. That game is called Freshwater Fly and it's designed by Brian Suhre and published by Bellwether Games. Now this is Brian Suhre's follow-up to the very good game Coldwater Crown. Now while this game and that one both have a fishing theme, they play very differently. Now, Freshwater Fly uses a unique rondelle mechanic and some dice drafting. Players have both public and private goals to try and achieve, and scoring points through the various fish that you can catch. Now, the game plays 1 to 4 players, and while we are looking at a pre-production copy, rules can be tweaked, the game can be tweaked a little bit, so make sure you check out the Kickstarter for any updates or changes to this game. But why don't we take a look at the setup and how to play, and I'll give you my thoughts on the other side. Okay, let's talk about how to set up Freshwater Fly. You have your main board here, and then you have a bunch of fish cards, and they have different kinds of fish, dolly, brook, rainbow, grayling, and there's others. But you'll also notice that not only there are different types of fish, but there are also different colors to the fish as well. And this will have to do with the how difficult it is to catch these fish. Of course, if you're colorblind, they also have symbols here as well. And on the back of them, you have the strength of the fish, strength 1, 2, 2, and then the victory points for catching these different fish. Anyway, you're going to take these cards, shuffle them, and then we're going to place them out here on the board. When you're placing them out on the board, you can just place them out randomly. Now you're going to fill in fish in every spot except for those that have the rocks. Any fish that are left over, you'll just place them here in a draw pile. Then you have these rock cards. These rock cards are going to give you different kinds of bonuses, and you will shuffle those, and depending on the number of players, you're going to put out that many cards on each rock plus 1. So we're going to set up for a 2-player game. So we'd put 3 there, 3 there, and 3 right there. The rest of the rock cards can go back into the box. All right, you have some momentum tiles. You'll have 5 of those in the game. They are double-sided. You will place those in these slots here, all kind of facing the same direction to start the game. All right, down here you have the hatch spaces. Now you have a number of these tiles here, and these tiles, if it's a 2 or 3 player game, you're going to use this side. If it's a 4-player game, you're going to use this side, and you're going to place those out here. Now you're going to have more of these tiles than hatch spaces on the board, and that's fine. You're going to take the very last one and you'll place it at the very end of the space here. Go ahead and show you that. Just go ahead and place it off to the side of the board. All right, next you have the hatch tokens. There's more than these in here, but you're going to place them into this bag. And then, looking at this tile here, each tile will tell you how many to place onto each hatch tile. All right, once you have them filled in, again, including the one that starts off the board, you can put the rest of them, or keep the rest of them in the bag and place the bag off to the side. Okay, there's a few more pieces to put out. In a 2 or 3 player game, you will use 7 dice, so just place those out. The other dice can be returned to the box. You have a pile of flies that you can use. They come in different colors, and they are double-sided as well. you have the 4 strike cards. This is catching the fish, and then this is missing. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Just place those off to the side. All right, each player is going to be given a player board. This will be your reel, but you can either just choose which one you want or pass these out randomly. Each board is different in its individual goals, which are listed down here. Otherwise, the boards are all the same. You'll go ahead and set your reel up to the 12 o'clock spot. You have a finesse token, which you can start on the number 1. You also have a drag token that you can place at its spot. Now you're going to select which fly you want to use. For this step, you're probably going to want to pay attention to what colored tokens are in the hatch. So in this case, and we'll go over why that's important in a bit, but I'm going to go ahead and take a gray fly and just attach it to my board there. That is it for setting up your player board. There's one other thing, that is this casting token here that I forgot to mention during board setup. You just take this out, you can set it out off to the side of the board or on the board, and now you're ready to play. Okay, the goal to Freshwater Fly is to gain the more points from fish and achievements than your opponents. And the game lasts any number of rounds until someone has caught their 7th fish. Once that happens, the game immediately ends, and then you're going to add up the points from fish that you caught. Like I said earlier, fish have victory points listed on them and the different achievements. Okay, in addition to getting victory points from the different fish that you can catch, there are also achievements that you can get victory points from. Each player board has their own unique set of achievements. Okay, this one says that for every pair of same colored hatch tokens, that's these here. So if I had these at the end of the game and this was my board, I would get 3 victory points. And I would get it for every pair of matching colors. However, you can only score a color once. So if I had another pair of gray, I wouldn't be able to claim another 3 victory points. All right, in addition to that, for every rainbow and brook that I catch, I'm going to get 3 victory points. It has to be a pair, okay? If I catch a cutthroat and a grayling, I get 3 victory points. A dolly and a steelhead, I will get 4 victory points. Now, in addition to that, you also have the public achievements that you can try to complete. So up here, it says for every yellow, black, and green colored card that you have at the end of the game. So if you have a set, you're going to get 3 victory points. We mentioned during setup, the fish have different colors. If you're the first player that gets 7 or more, you will get 2 victory points. And then finally, whoever catches the most coho is going to get 6 victory points. If there's a tie, then you will share the points. All right, after randomly selecting a start player, that player is going to take all 7 dice and they will roll them. Since I have a lack of space here, I'm just going to roll them right here onto the board and splash around in the water here. All right, now starting with the first player, the player is going to get to select a die, and then you have 3 actions that you can take with that die. You can only take 1 of the 3 actions, but there are 3 actions to choose from. The first action is to cast, and at the beginning of the game, chances are that will be the first thing that you will do. Let's say I took this 5 here. This allows me to cast into the 5 column. As you can see, each of the columns are numbered 1 through 6. Okay, so if I took the 5, and normally you would place it in front of you, but I'm just going to place it here and place the rest of these off to the side as we illustrate this. This means that I can I can cast into this column here. Now, where I decide to cast is going to be dependent on what I'm trying to achieve. If we take a look here at, let me remove these so they don't fall off here. But if I look at my board here and the different types of fish. One of them is a steelhead, and I noticed there is a steelhead listed in that particular spot. So I could take the casting token here and say, okay, I'm going to try to catch that fish. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to look down here at the hatch, all right? And what you're looking for is a colored hatch token that matches your fly. You remember we took a gray one at the beginning of the game. There is a gray one here, so I am allowed to try to catch that fish. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the strike deck and you are going to give it to the player to the right, and they are going to shuffle these cards, all right? And then they will turn over the first card. Now this is a miss, okay? That means I did not catch that fish. I would be looking for the one with the fish on it. Because I didn't catch that fish, I have a few options. One is to spend finesse, if I were to have any, all right? If I were to spend finesse, I would be allowed to gain another card. So the player, you know, who had turned this one or turned this one over would turn over the next one, okay? And if I still hadn't caught it, I could spend another finesse if I had it. However, the next thing you can do if you don't want to spend your finesse is to let your fly drift downstream. Now when you're drifting, you're going to drift into the next column to the left. And when you drift, you can drift to an adjacent spot, and it can be diagonal. So from here, I could drift to here, or I could drift to the rock. Now there is some strategic reasons why you might want to drift to a rock. We won't get into the advanced strategery, but let's go to this dolly. And the reason I say that is because if I look at my board, I also could use a dolly. Now that I've drifted, I look in the hatch. Is there a token that matches my fly? Yes, there is a gray one. So I'm allowed to try to catch that fish. Now, we already tried once and failed, but because we drifted, we now get 2 cards. So that's another miss.
No way.
Oh, no! Unbelievable. So we know that this card is going to be the fish, okay? So we know that. So at this point, again, we could either spend a finesse if we had one to get that last card, or we could allow ourselves to drift one more time. And you know what? Instead of, well, you know what? Let's take a look at our board. We also need a rainbow, okay? And there is a rainbow. So again, I could drift to here, here, or here. I'm going to drift to here, again, looking to make sure at the bottom that there is a token that matches my fly. There is. I would now get 2 more cards, but there's only 1 card left. We know it's the catch. So I have now caught this rainbow.
You know what I'm talking about.
All right. And because it was adjacent to a rock, so if it's this space, or this space, not diagonal, you get to take the top card of the rock deck. And these can give you different bonuses. In this case, this is for every grayling or brook that you catch, you're going to get an additional victory point. And just to clarify, in this particular case, it's an or. So I either have to get an extra victory point for every grayling or for every brook. I can't get a victory point for each one that I have. Okay, because I caught that fish with my gray lure, my gray fly, I'm going to take the gray hatch token from the column that I caught that fish from. You're then going to go ahead and refill this spot. Okay, it now would pass to the next player to then draft a die. Right, let's talk about what happens once you've landed a fish. You haven't caught it yet, okay? You've hooked it, but now you need to reel it in. The first thing, we got this rock card, so we can just place it there, and that'll now be a permanent part of our tackle box there. And now you have the fish, so you will turn it over, and you can see that it is a 6, so it is worth 6 points at the end of the game. And It's yellow, it has a yellow border on it, so you're going to place it above the yellow spot on your player board. As you can see, you have green, black, and yellow. This is the ease of which it is to reel in a particular fish. The yellow are the hardest to reel in, and the green are the easiest. You then have your hatch token, which you can now place into your reel, and that reel needs to be set at 12 o'clock. You can only ever have one fish on your line at a time, and the die that you had drafted or chosen earlier, you're just going to keep that in front of you. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the finesse on your player board and how that is helpful for you. Whenever you have a finesse token, you can have up to a maximum of a 4 finesse strength, okay? And depending on the strength of the finesse is going to determine what action or actions you can do. So if I have a level 1 finesse, I am allowed to do these 3 actions down here. By spending 1 finesse, I can add or subtract 1 to the die that I drafted. You can never go above a 6, you can never go below a 1, and your 6 can't wrap to a 1 or 1 to a 6. The next thing you can do is move a hatch token to the left or right. So back up on our board here. Let's say, for example, you still had the gray fly on here. You wanted to cast into the 3 column to try and catch one of the fish in there, but there isn't a gray token in the 3 spot. Okay, but there are 3 of them here in the 2 spot. So you could spend a finesse to move one of your choice to the left or to the right. The third thing that you can do is to get +1 card. As we saw earlier when trying to land a fish, okay, you could spend 1 finesse to gain a 2nd card, okay? So if you needed to draw again, you really wanted to catch a fish right where you were, you could spend a finesse. And you can spend as many as you have. So if you drew a card and you still missed, but you had finesse left, you could spend another 1 to keep doing that. If you have a level 2 or a level 3 finesse, you're allowed to do these actions, but you are also allowed to now swap out your fly. And that can be important. Maybe you want to catch a fish, but you want to use a different colored fly. That allows you to take that out and swap it with another one. If you have a level 4 finesse, you can do any of the actions listed. So you can do these 3, you can change out your fly, but the last thing you can do is to spend a finesse to put your drag token, which we left off the board there, onto the fish. Fish will have a certain power, okay? And we'll talk about how that affects trying to reel in a fish in a little bit. But you could spend a finesse, you don't spend all 4, you just spend 1 to take this and place it onto the fish, effectively rendering that fish to a 0 power fish instead of a 2. All right, before we move on to some of the other actions, let's kind of finish up that first action as far as the casting. Let's say it's the next player's turn, and let's say that they have a blue fly on their board, and it is their turn. And they want to go after this coho. They're going to try to catch the most coho to get those 6 victory points at the end of the game. Unfortunately, there's no 5 out here, so they can't cast into the 5. Catching the coho would be good for them. There is blue here, all right, but there isn't a 5 out here for them to choose. Now, if they had finesse, and at the beginning of the game they would have 1, they could take a 5 or a 4 or a 6 and change it to a 5 to cast there. The other thing they could do, though, instead of spending that, is maybe they would take this 6, okay? And again, it's illustratively, I'll just place it right there. Now, they can place this anywhere out here that they want. Well, it doesn't really matter, because if you look, there are no blue hatch tokens in this spot, which means because they have a blue fly on their board, they're not going to be able to catch anything in that column. So what happens is it will now drift. And again, they could drift, since they're in the middle, they could drift to here, to here, to here. Well, maybe he wants to catch, or he does want to catch that coho, so he drifts there. Because there is a blue hatch token there and matches, he can now try to land that fish. Again, shuffling these cards, they're going to get to draw. Now, because it drifted, you get 2 cards. All right, and boom, they caught it on the second spot. Okay, so keep that in mind. You can always cast into a spot where you don't have a colored hatch token that matches your fly, and then drift downstream to try and catch the fish that you want. In this case, the player then would take the coho. It is not adjacent to these because it's diagonal, but they would get to take this and put it onto their player board to then start to reel in. All right, let's talk about the next action that you can do when you draft a die, and that is to reel in a fish. Now, let's say the dice have come back to me. Again, we had a 2-player game, so these are the dice that are left. I can take any of these dice and start reeling it in. I have to remember, though, that the rainbow here has a power strength of 2. What does that mean? That means, let's say I took this 4. All right? That means I get to start reeling this fish in 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. However, because it's a strength of 2, it subtracts 2 from whatever the die that I use. So I would actually just end up here. Now, because of the strength, I would not be able to take the 2 or the 1. Or I should say I could take the 2 or the 1, but I couldn't use it to reel in the fish because the die that I took is not greater than the strength of the fish. And you can't go backwards on the board there, so you wouldn't be able to take this. Now, you could take these to do the third action that you can do with a dice, and that is to just take a die, all right, and gain 2 finesse. But I don't want to do that. I want to start trying to reel this puppy in, so I'm going to take this, and I will only get to move 2. Let's talk about these different, there are 5 different spots out here, and each one of them have each of these 4 here have a special ability. All right, this first box. Now, if any time when you're reeling, whenever your reel stops on a space, you get to activate that bonus. This here says that you get to place the drag token onto your fish. This spot here says that you get to take one of the face-up momentum tiles that are at the top of the board. Remember, there are 5 of them, and at the beginning of the game, they're all going to be set to their A side here. And I know you cannot see that, but trust me, it says A. Trust me. And anyway, you get to take one of these tiles. Now, you can use these tiles immediately or save them, but you may only have 1 tile at a time. And if you have one and you were to end up back on this spot again, you would have to turn it over. You must turn it over to its other side. Now, we're not going to go over all of the different momentum tiles, but let's take a look at this one, for example. This one here says that when you spend it, you're going to gain 1 finesse, and then you are allowed to cast into a spot that has into the 4 column to any fish. All right. Of course, if you had a fish on the line, you wouldn't be able to use this yet, so you'd probably wait until you didn't have a fish on your line there. On the other side, you have the ability to reel in as if you were using a number 3 die, and to swap out your fly. Now, you can only swap out your fly when you don't have a fish on your line. This spot here gives you +1 finesse. This spot here says if you stop here and it is a green fish, you get to move ahead to one space. So if you stopped here, you'd get to go ahead right there. However, if it was a yellow fish, you would actually go back one, and you would end up gaining a finesse for that. Now, at any time, whenever you reach the top of the reel, or even go past it, you're going to move your fish ahead one spot. Okay, so earlier we took a number 4 here, and we could only move it 2 because of the strength of the fish here. But, you know, before it moves to the next player, I say, wait a minute, stop. I want to take that back, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a finesse to change that 4 to a 3. That means I can only move one space. So I can move it to there, but now I can take this, because of that bonus, and put it onto that fish, and now the strength is 0. All right, let's go on. Let's say my opponent took the 4. That is now what is left in the dice pool. I am going to take this 4 here. And now, because the strength of the fish is 0, I can move this 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I have reached the top, I can now move this fish 1 space over. And now I am 1 step closer to catching that fish. Okay, let's say the opponent took the 2 and left me with the 1. Because the strength is now 0, I could reel it in 1, but I think since it's a 1, instead, because getting this is already on the fish, so it really won't help me at all. I'm going to take the 1 and just get 2 finesse. Now, a round ends when all of the dice have been used. You're then going to take the dice, these were ours, and here were the opponents. You're now going to add them up. We have 8, 12, 13. And the opponent has 12. Whoever has the lowest number in dice will get to be the first player for the next round. All right, at the end of the round, what you're going to do is all of these are going to move down 1 spot. So the spot that was in the 1 column will come off, all right? All of the hatch tokens will come off. They will not go back into the bag. All right, so they will stay out of the bag. You won't refill the bag until it is empty and you go to draw more and there aren't any. The one that started off the board will now come onto the board, and then you're going to take the empty one and you're going to place it off to the end of the board. All right. And then, of course, you will get to fill it with the number of tokens that are listed in this game. It would be 4. All right. So the players will know what's coming up next. Whoever had the lowest dice total from the previous round will get to roll the dice and then start drafting. Okay, we've set up for the next round, and the dice have been rolled, and it is our turn. And let's say, you know, we got a 6, so we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would reel it into here. All right, and then say maybe on the next turn, I ended up getting a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, you've now caught this fish. Okay, so you can now just place it off to the side, and then you're going to take the hatch token that you had, and you can just place it there on the card itself. The reason why, again, is we have a goal for every matching pair. We're going to get 3 victory points. This fish is worth 6 victory points as well, and it was one of the 2 that I needed, the rainbow and the grayling, to give me 3 victory points. The drag token then can go back onto your board. Something to keep in mind that I didn't mention when you were catching a fish, if let's say this had been a 6, remember when it was here? If it had been a 6 and I had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You keep going, because remember the fish was here. I passed it up. I've caught the fish, but you still keep going, and wherever it stops, you would get the bonus. So play will continue with people drafting dice, taking one of the actions, trying to land fish, and then reel them in, getting the victory points, and then once someone has reached the 7th fish, the game immediately ends. Any fish that are on your lines, when the game ends, do not count. However, the hatch token that you were using will count, so you will get to use that in endgame scoring if needed, but the fish that was on your line does not count. You're then going to add up the victory points from the totals that were on each of the fish that you caught. All right, so you'll get this amount. You will then add up the amounts that were on your personal player board for the achievements you had listed there. You'll also go up here and score for these achievements, and whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. And that's how you play Freshwater Fly. All right, so that is Freshwater Fly. As far as the components are concerned, can't really say a whole lot about them because we don't know if they are finalized. I feel that they are mostly final, but there could be some tweaks here and there with coloring or, the board, the different cards that they use and such. So can't say a whole lot there. I like what I see. I certainly like the player boards with that rondelle, the reel that acts like a rondelle. I like the hatch tokens, nice, thick, chunky component. And the one thing, though, that I would change maybe is the strike cards. Maybe it's just kind of nitpicky, but I'd like to see maybe multiple sets, maybe a set for each player, because it gets a little fiddly moving the cards around for everyone to do the strike cards. That's a minor, very minor complaint on my part. I think more importantly, though, would be to see that these cards are sleeved. So I would hope maybe that the cards would come with sleeves, because they are going to get a lot of use and a lot of wear, and you don't want to have them marked or anything so that players know, which card is on top. Now I will say in the pre-production copy, the review copy that I had, one of the strike cards was not cut correctly. So the back of the card, you could tell which one was the actual strike card, the actual catch card. So we had to resort to shuffling underneath the table. So again, it's a review copy, so hopefully that'll be tightened up in the end. But if not, I'd like to see sleeves or maybe just a single colored back or something on that. All right, as far as the gameplay, I think it's very solid. Now, on the surface, it may even seem a little simplistic. Now, what I mean by that is that if you think about it, you're really only doing 2 actions on your turn. You are either reeling or catching. Now, yes, there is a 3rd action where you can take a die to gain finesse, but for the most part, you're either reeling in a fish or you're trying to catch a fish. However, if you take a deeper dive, no pun intended, you'll see that there is a depth of strategy here. Take catching, for instance. You take a die with a higher or lower number because maybe you want to cast a fish in a higher area, but you could take a lower number, maybe try to make sure you get first player the next round and try to catch, a different fish that you might need. You have to consider what hatch colors are out there, and are you trying to collect a set of certain colors to complete a goal? Am I going to have to change out my fly based on the hatch tokens that are out there? Do I use my finesse to move hatch tokens around to maximize the way that I catch a fish? What kind of fish do I need? Do I decide to cast upstream with a higher number die to try and drift into the fish that I really want to try and increase my chances of catching that fish? a lot to consider there. As far as reeling, again, which die do I take? Do I take a higher one? Do I take a lower one? What have other people taken? Because maybe I want to go first. I don't want to go last, in the next round. So that's going to depend on what I take. Do I try to reel in quickly, or do I try to set myself up to gain certain bonuses on that rondel? Should I use finesse to add my drag token, or try to take a die so that I can get it for free and not have to spend my finesse? What are the other players doing? Are they out catching coho? There's 6 victory points right there if they have the most. Maybe I should be trying to catch those as well. How close is someone to finishing the game? I need to pay attention to that. I don't want to have a fish on the line when someone else finishes, or even better, I want to try and finish and catch that 7th fish before they do, because that's going to be more victory points for myself. So there is a lot going on under the hood. Okay, so I really love... Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry. No pun intended. Not really. Nah. By the way, I love those guys' work. You should check them out. Anyway, I really love the rondel mechanic in this game, and I like the dice drafting as well. Yes, there is some luck. There's luck based on the fish that come out compared to what you need, where they come out onto the board, and what column as opposed to what dice are out there. But any good game that I think has luck, if there's a way, especially when it comes to dice, if there's a way that you can mitigate the luck factor, I think you've done a great job. And here you are able to use your finesse tokens, and sometimes even the bonuses that you can get from the top of the board to try to mitigate some of the luck in the game. But overall, this is a very good game. It has some cool mechanics, and it's easy to learn, it's easy to play, but it does have some depth to it. So I certainly recommend this game, and if it sounds like something you would like, check out the Kickstarter for this game. Like I said, I will have a link in the description below so that you can check it out. So if you like this review, please leave a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and check out our other great content. And once again, I thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for visiting the Arch Gaming Network. For more great content, check us out at archgamingnetwork.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.